Hello, Austin.
Our show was created to empower and encourage parents to listen.
These children are our future leaders.
The Eagle Talk Show on the road.
Here's Micah.
Welcome to this episode of the Eagle Talk Show. Our theme today is superheroes in the community, and with us is Mayor Steve Adler from Austin and Council Member Greg Casar. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning.
We're doing great. Good morning.
Thank you for being here. We recognize you as superheroes in the community, but somebody was a superhero in your lives. Can you tell us who was a superhero in your life and how they empowered you?
You first, Mayor.
All right. Well, the obvious answer to that question is true. It's my parents who were great role models for me. Neither one of them went to college. Family was never really sure whether or not my father went to college or not. I mean, graduated from high school or not. That story would change over time as we got older. But another superhero in my life was Mike Michelson, who was a teacher that I had in high school. And he was the teacher that was always driving us in evenings and on weekends when our parents couldn't. He was the one who talked to us like we were adults. He was the one that really related to the challenges that we were going through, and he pushed us and took a whole group of us in our community and had us dream bigger dreams. So he has a very special place in my heart.
What about you, Council Member?
I want to talk a little bit about my grandmother, my abuela. I remember growing up, especially sometimes when my mom was going to be having my younger brother or my younger sister, or when my mom was sick, my grandmother would take care of me. And I remember she would always talk to me about, what are you doing for other people? Or what do you think about this happening in the community, or about how she volunteered? And I always thought it was sort of like a nagging grandma thing, but it's only until later that you realize how those things impact you and change the way that you are and the way that you think. And I don't think I'd be the same person or have ever thought about doing a job like this if it hadn't been for somebody like that, who, when I was a kid, I felt like it was her poking me and nagging me, but actually it was making me who I was.
Great. Can you tell us about how education has played a role in your leadership development and getting to where you are now?
Your turn to go first.
Yeah. For me, I think the best parts of my education were not, you have to do your classes well and do your homework well, but it was the teachers that pushed me to ask questions and to think critically and to not accept things necessarily the way they were, and to think about, well, why are we talking about something in the first place? And the idea that it's not just about absorbing information, but about learning how to think about stuff. And so even though I was all right and liked my math and science classes, it was always sort of reading books and the education that made me think about the world that made me, I think, who it is that I am. And so I think that it's really important, regardless of whether you may not become a historian or a writer, but for you to and for me to have read history and to read lots of books made me be able to think about things in a different way, and education making me find out who I was instead of just learning exactly what was coming up on a test.
How about you, Mr. Mayor?
For education, for me, more than anything else, I think, is it's a tool. It's a way to open doors. I went to a school, and if you look at the people who graduated from my high school and the people that didn't, the ones that graduated were able to do more things. They had more opportunities. When I went to college, I became real aware of the jobs and opportunities that were open because I had gone to college that wouldn't have been if I hadn't gone to college. And then I went to law school, and that opened up even more doors to me. So to me, education is a tool. It's a key that gives me and I think people who will follow education just greater opportunity, more choices in life.
How do you view the importance of parent engagement or even community engagement in our school district and in our city affairs?
I think parent engagement and community engagement in our schools is vital and key. In fact, if you look at schools and how they perform and how children perform in schools and how schools become focal points in communities where people get together and they help one another, to me it invariably comes down to three things. It's the teachers, it's the administrators, it's the principal. But more than anything else, I think it's the parents and the community involvement. It's demonstrating to the kids and to the system that this is something worth time and investment. The more parents in the community are involved, the more invested they become, the more control they have and opportunity to impact the lives of their kids and their communities. And the schools do better. It changes the culture in a school. When parents come into a school and expect and demand success, where success is what people have set as the goal to the point where it's just expected to happen, a funny thing happens. Success levels rise. So I think that parent involvement and community involvement in schools is vital.
Councilmember Casar?
And then I think the mayor has covered the school piece. So on the city side, you know, the mayor is the head elected official here at the city, and we, the city council, are the voting body that votes also with the mayor on issues. And we affect the schools and kids and parents so much. And whatever is going on at your school or in your neighborhood, the city council also needs to be hearing about it. If there are issues that there with police, whether police need to be doing their job differently or better, we are the ones that are ultimately in charge of police policy or fire, or if somebody's having trouble paying their electric bill, we're ultimately the policymakers responsible for the electric utility, or the parks or the streets, or if there's a sidewalk missing, or if it's dangerous on a particular street. Those are the sorts of issues that the city council is responsible that affect school parents and school children, and just the school success in general. So we need to be hearing from you if there's something that the city needs to be doing to improve the school.
Great. In Austin today, we have a large segment of the population that is at or below the poverty level, and affordable housing has become a really hot topic. Can you talk a little bit about how the council will address that issue and parallel it with public transportation as well?
I think that's the issue that I grapple with the most every day, that I wake up thinking about and go to bed thinking about. And there hasn't been an American city right now that's growing like ours that has exactly figured out how to do it. But if somebody's going to do it, we're going to be the ones to figure it out. We're working very hard on making sure that we raise as much money as we can to build safe, affordable housing, especially in communities where it's disappearing. In this budget, we recently put together some money to have a team of organizers and community people to go talk to people in apartments when their landlords are pushing them out or being abusive, or when the housing isn't safe. And we have to make sure, again, that we have public transportation to get people from housing to schools and to their jobs, because a lot of people spend just as much, if not more, on their transportation as they do on their housing, especially when people get pushed out to the edges of town. So part of our goal and my goal, but I think it really is the whole council's goal, is how do we keep affordable housing near schools and near the central city so that we don't put those transportation costs on those families if they're getting pushed out from their communities. And so we need to raise the money to do it. We need to change the rules so that we encourage affordable housing, and then we need to protect our parents and students who are living in existing affordable housing and make sure that they can stay there.
Great.
You know, one of the reasons why I like serving on the City Council with Councilmember Casar, my colleague, is we share, I think, those issues as among the top, if not the highest priority. There's an affordability crisis in the city. We're losing people and we're losing communities. So I too start the day and end the day thinking about those issues. Ultimately, there are two ways that you make things more affordable. You help make things cost less, or you give people more money to spend. And the City Council is trying to look at both of those. We're looking at tools that the city has to ensure the preservation of housing stock that is affordable for people that are in the workplace. We're looking at different options that can be built in communities so that there are units that can be built, apartments behind homes, where we can increase the number of duplexes or triplexes, so that we have additional options so we can increase more supply. We're looking at innovative funding techniques so that we can purchase and stockpile and make available some of the affordable apartments before they get converted into high-priced condos. And we're doing right now with a lot of projects in town to help ensure that when a project gets built anywhere in the city, it has a component of that project that will be used for housing that's affordable. So one way you make things more affordable, you help try to make things cost less, but then you also have to help give people more money to spend. We have a gap in this city between the jobs that are available and the people in this town that are looking for jobs but aren't trained or skilled to take those jobs. And we need to do a better job of making that alignment. We're creating in Austin, Texas, more middle-class jobs than any city in the country, which is incredible. Except that we have lots and lots of people who live here that aren't trained or skilled to be able to take those jobs. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those jobs don't require a 4-year degree, although some do. Mm-hmm. A lot of them don't require a 2-year associate's degree. Some do. But a lot of those jobs just require a 6-month certificate that someone can get and then step into a job that has enough money to be able to provide for themselves and their spouses and their families. So we have to do a lot better job on training in the city, and we're beginning to do programs that will help with that.
So whether a child is going on to college or to vocational school, what advice would you give to a child or to their family who's trying to help them get through that next stage in their life?
Well, I think that it's setting the goal and it's being serious about the goal. I grew up inner city DC with parents that didn't go to college in a part of town where a lot of people did not. But when you set the goal and it becomes real, when you set the goal and it becomes part of who you are, you can find ways to be able to reach those goals. So whether someone's going to vocational school or college, getting to a place where you set that goal is important, and then it's a question of working hard and being very determined and not taking no and rolling with the punches and being persistent. It's the old saying that you have to be the future that you dream, and I think that that's possible here.
And I think it's hard to put it any better than that.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Casar, for joining us today. We'll be right back with this Healthy Minute from Sendero Health.
Welcome to Healthy Minute, brought to you by Sendero. Today we'll talk about washing our hands and why is it important. A, stop the germs. B, stay healthy. C, we succeed in school. After all, we're the driver of our health. Hey guys, good to see you. Wait a minute, are we forgetting something? We gotta wash our hands. Turn around.
Soap and water, soap and water, soap and water, soap and water. Wash your hands with soap and water. Wash your hands with soap and water. Faucet on, water flows. Get it nice and warm. Then grab that soap, lather up, scrub up to your
And we're back with the Eagle Talk Show, and continuing with our theme of superheroes in the community, we're here to interview Monica Guzman, who we also consider to be a superhero in our community. Monica, you've been very active in the North Austin community. Who has been a superhero in your life, and what did they do to empower you?
I think it's family members. My parents are originally from the Rio Grande Valley, San Benito. My mother was an only child, my father fifth of seven, but both are the first to go to college in their families, and my mother was the first to complete high school. She knew that she wanted a solid education from UT, and even though my dad graduated before her, she helped him with his admission form so he could come here. And then as we were growing up, unfortunately, our parents split, but she was determined to finish her degree, even though a single parent of 6 children. And so just, I think, watching her, juggling jobs, children, her parents had moved up here to help her, that's what made the difference. And I've always told people that for us, it was not, are you going to college? It was just a matter of where and how you're going to pay for it. There was never any question about it. I've always been a huge advocate for public education. And then for me personally, when it came time to go to college, I was a single parent at a young age. People thought I was completing my bachelor's for my son. I'm like, no, it's for me. This is what I wanted. It took me just over a decade to do, but it was, other than being a mom, it was one of my proudest moments. And I think it's just watching my parents, what they had to do to get theirs done.
How has education played a role in helping to shape who you are?
I guess to me, thinking about it, simply the fact that I learned how to read, even just basic math. And back then, I just had very good teachers that taught critical thinking skills that unfortunately some students don't get that nowadays in any school district, whether it's Austin or anywhere else. And I've always been curious. I refer to myself as the professional student. I love to do research. I follow my heart, my passions. That's what guides me for the most part. And it always goes back to kids, because children are the ones that someday will grow up. They will be the business and government leaders making decisions for us when we're sitting on some porch in a rocking chair. And so we need to make sure we take care of them.
You are very active in our community, and I think it's really easy to see that you value parent engagement and community engagement. What do you see as important in being engaged in our city and in what you do?
I think it's finding a way. Everybody has a voice, and everybody's voice matters. It doesn't matter if you're originally from Austin or the other side of the universe. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. All that matters is you live here, you work here, so you have a say in what goes on. What a lot of people don't realize, it's the people, the everyday Jane and John, we're the ones with the power to make change. But the only way that's going to happen is we get out there and connect. Even if it's just your neighbor down the street, across the apartment complex, find out what's going on. I don't expect people to be involved at the level I am. I'm an empty nester. That's what makes it possible for me. But I know what they've been through, having been a single parent, juggling multiple jobs. I have a friend, her focus is her child's education. So everything she does is around the school. And that's key. Other people are into the environment. Even if you can only help out once or twice a year, that's huge. It's just finding what's your niche, what matters to you. That's what engages the people. That's what brings them out. Find what matters to them and then show them how to find it or take them there, whatever it is, so they can connect. I know not everybody can make it to City Hall or the school board meetings or even the monthly meetings that I do with Restore Runberg, but there's still a way to connect. And my thing has always been for the leaders is don't assume that they can come to you. You need to go to them where they're at to get across the transportation, the digital, the language barriers, or just a busy schedule. But it's finding a way for the leaders to connect with the community as a whole.
That's really great information. Can you tell us who or what inspires you to be so involved in the community?
I think it's, my parents couldn't even tell me actually when I was small. I was always the type of person that I put others before me. I can't even figure that out. That's just my nature. And I always just felt that everybody should do what's right. You know, basically the golden rule. I guess I learned that enough growing up that if I wanted to be treated fairly, I had to treat everybody else fairly. I may not be high up on the socioeconomic scale right now, but I did have a very privileged childhood, a solid middle-class upbringing, nice neighborhood, a community school literally around the corner from my home, extracurricular activities, and I think having that as in the early years really made a difference, because I see where I am and people are in this area compared to what I had. I remember hearing stories about my parents, what they dealt with, what they had or didn't have. So at least it's one of these, remember where you came from. I didn't, but my family did. And that's another thing that plays into just what I do. I guess I'm just people say it in jest, but the Miss Goody Two-Shoes.
What advice or message do you have for other community members who maybe want to take action or see something that they want to change in their communities?
Well, if they have children, definitely be engaged in their education. Get to know the teachers. If you can be involved in PTA or something else, or just helping out in the classroom. But know who the other kids are that your children interact with. Know their parents. That's where you start building community. Know the teachers. If you felt your child has been wrong, don't just let things go. Get in there and say, look, my daughter came home and told me X, Y, and Z. I don't understand. Can you please tell me why? And if they still think it's wrong, do something about it. I have a sister that was that way, and I did that with her. When I was the second mom of the family, I would march her back to school if I think something was wrong or I thought she left stuff behind. I knew her education was too important. So it's just a matter of being engaged. And if you're an empty nester or things are fine with the kids or you don't have kids, like I said, what's your passion? What matters to you? Is it your church? Is it just getting to know the neighbors? And act on it. Go meet your neighbors. And that also leads to so many other things. Public safety, building community, trading resources, sharing. It all overlaps and builds.
What advice do you have to encourage parents or even grandparents to remain active in helping their children achieve their dreams?
Well, I think reflect back on their own experiences. I think what made a difference for me was hearing stories, especially from my mother. They grew up in the Valley in the 40s. And back then, it was if you spoke Spanish in a classroom or on school property, you got smacked. Well, 30 years later, they're up here in Austin, but that's all my mother knew. And so based on that, she didn't push learning Spanish. She didn't push knowing traditions. And unfortunately, we ended up hurting because of that. So because I know that, learning from their experiences, I try to give my son that, give his children that. And then the stories from my grandparents, the things they did, those are history lessons that you'll never learn in the school. So their education continues outside of the school building. Be part of that. Give them a personal history lesson to complete and complement what they get in the classroom.
Great. You serve on several committees that discuss housing affordability and economic development. In Austin today, many educators and families are finding that they can no longer afford to live in Austin, and about 60% of the Austin ISD student population is at or below the economically disadvantaged level. How does the general Austin public participate in conversations about this issue to ensure the accommodation of more affordable housing that is paralleled with adequate public transportation?
Well, sadly, the general Austin public doesn't have that conversation. And part of that goes back to being privileged. Do you live in a very, I don't want to say sheltered, but limited horizons in terms of society? There are people in some parts of Austin that's all they know. Everything they need is within their reach, as it were, down the block. They have no idea what's going on the other side of town. And so I always encourage people, go explore. But I also have to recognize not everybody has a car like I do. Not everybody has the time to explore like I do. So it's just a matter of, again, those of us who are the leaders, whether we're elected, appointed, or we just like to be out there, we do it. We need to reach out to those who aren't where we're at. Like I said, meet them where they're at.
Empower them.
Empower them. Show them, like I was at a digital empowerment session this morning, and it goes back to that. Find out where they're at. You can teach someone how to use a computer, but what good's it going to do them if they don't have one at home?
Yeah.
Show them, teach them where the resources are. Goes back to teach them how to fish. So that way they can take care of the fishing from that point forward. And it's truly a village to raise a child. Everybody in this community needs to step up, regardless of what level you're at, regardless of your educational or financial backgrounds. Everybody has a responsibility to make sure we move forward.
That's great. Do you have any parting words of advice or encouragement for the Austin community?
Well, just find out how you can be involved. You know, if you've never thought about your passions, sit down and think about it. What do I like to do? If you like to read, go volunteer in a library or at a school. Everybody's got something that they like, and just run with it.
Thank you so much for agreeing to this interview, Monica. This concludes this episode of the Eagle Talk Show on superheroes in our community. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Remember, you are the driver of your child's bus. Usted es el chofer del autobús de sus hijos.